circle of human perspective.
Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I have Candace Craw Goldman with me today, special guest. How are you doing, Candace?
I am so happy to be here. I'm doing great. It's a great August day. How are you doing, Shane?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. And for those who don't know already, because this is like hot off the press news, in fact, we haven't even updated the website or anything like that yet. Candace Craw Goldman will be joining us in Nashville, Tennessee. Can you believe that? Woohoo!
I'm
Actually,
telling you what, I'm so excited. I just can't hardly stand it.
let me put the flyer on the screen here because this is all new information. We're just now getting the artwork ready and everything. So, yeah, this is
Woo!
it. How about
Woo!
that? So we're excited. You guys can take a screenshot if you want. If you want to look into anybody, they've got their web addresses right underneath. But yeah, take a screenshot. We're so excited. This is coming up. It's less than 90 days away at this point. We're in that 90-day window. So people are getting their tickets and getting their accommodations and everything ready. So let me come back to you. All righty.
So fantastic. So, I said this to you or asked you this privately, but maybe you want to share. I mean, how in the world did it get to be picked on the day that it got to be picked? Because everybody knows what week that was. Was this done like on purpose, or did it just align, or what do you know about the date? Because, of course, November 5th is United States elections for the year of 2024. And you're starting this party on the 7th. And I'm like, okay.
How about that, huh? No, okay. So when we were working out the dates, we were like wanting to go with the dates from the original year in 2019 when it's the same exact days and dates as in 2019. And then we went to move it a week later, but then it got a little to being too close to Thanksgiving and something else was going on in Nashville that week. So universe wanted it that week for whatever reason, and it makes me happy because I know there is a lot going on, and it'd be a perfect time for all of us to get together. You know.
Right? I mean, my first thought was, really? Really? And then I thought, you know what? The more and more I've thought about it, the more that people who think and believe that we have power to help create the reality that we want, what more perfect of a time could it be to have people like that come together and help choose, like, Cynthia says, that how good can it get, right?
Absolutely.
How good can it get with all of us? And I have to tell you, I mean, you may already know who she is, but fellow BQH practitioner Priscilla Lewis is coming from London. And I think she's actually like maybe even flying on election day or something from London to
Wow.
Kansas. And then we're going together, and I think my husband's going to go too. It all kind of depends on farm sitters and whoever's here to take care of my dad. And then we're stopping in Springfield, Missouri, and picking up 2 more people. So, I mean, we're coming with a caravan.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, it's going to
I'm
be an
really
exciting
excited.
time to get together. And, I was thinking about these special times of getting together now mean so much. We got together at East City a few years ago, and we've lost 4 or 5 people that was in that group since then, and it was like, wow, if we
Wow.
hadn't really met then and made that connection, that was like, that would have been a missed opportunity. And it was before the whole lockdown and everything. And how about that
Right.
with the BQH? I was thinking like how perfect it was when your system came out. And for you guys that know, this is like my mentor and teacher for the work I do with people. And so this is an honor to work with someone who worked directly with Dolores Cannon, one of my guides from the other side that helped me. So yeah, kudos to you. And thank you for coming on here, by the way.
Well, you're so welcome. I had people privately, people who anybody would know their names if I would say them. And of course, I'm not going to say them. But people who are still doing Dolores's method only who said, that's great, whatever you're doing, Candace, what you're doing, but I'm never going to do sessions online. I just, I don't want to. I like people coming in. I'm like, well, I do too, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. And I'm just following my intuition. And so many people who said, well, good on you, do what you think, but I'm never going to do that. Well, a lot of those never going to do that. That's only how they're doing, or that's how they're doing it only now, or they're doing both, you know. So it sort of was just me again following the intuition, even though if you took a survey and if you asked people, there wasn't a lot of popularity for this. You know, I was creating it and putting it together and all of that, you know, even in 2017, just kind of quietly, like trying it. You
Right.
know, is it really the same? Is it really as strong? Is it really, what's not safe about it? And you know what? Now that there's thousands of BQH practitioners across the world,
Hmm.
I can now confidently make this statement, which I couldn't make, of course, at first. I believe it's safer. It is safer to do this online. Why? Because a lot of people who come, even if you say bring a driver, they don't. They drive themselves to you. And even if you make sure that they're awake and grounded, do you know how many times I've gotten the message, I thought I was awake?
Right.
You know,
It's
I
kind
was
of like
still a
anesthesia. You just
little,
don't realize it. Yeah, you don't realize how
right,
groggy you are. Yeah.
exactly. And you know, I mean, I remember that when I had my session with Dolores, the whole next day was weird, right?
Yeah.
So where would you rather be, at home on your sofa or behind the wheel of a car?
Well, I find two other benefits because I do them in person too, and it's so hard to get a good recording. I mean, without having multiple devices around and things like that. And I'm always aware of EMFs. You don't want to surround everyone with EMFs either,
Exactly.
right? So it's like doing it this way, it's like you get the sound qualities much better, and the person is in the comfort of wherever they can pick the most comfortable place that they can find. They don't have to come to a weird
Exactly.
place when they need to take a break to go to the bathroom because that happens quite often. We are so used to getting up in our sleep and going to the bathroom, so they don't wake up as much as they would in person if they had to go into the strange bathroom and figure out, you
All
know what
that.
I mean? It's just it pulls you out of it. So by them being there, I've never had a problem with someone just getting right back into a session because they're used to going to the bathroom and getting right back into the bed. So, yeah,
It's
so
just natural. It's just
yeah.
natural. You remind me of something. Once when I was doing a session with another practitioner many years ago, we had just started the session and I had a little voice recorder over here that was digital recorder, which was recording my voice. But this gal, you know what she did? She took her phone, which she did her sessions, she recorded them on, and I never want to do that. I like a separate device. She put her phone right here on my chest while I was in trance.
Uh,
I'm going to suggest that none of you out there do that. It
yeah.
was absolutely, it was so disconcerting. And it was, you know, we managed through it. But, you know, this is somebody who I'd had a lot of sessions. But anyway, I understand and I agree. I agree with you there. And I'm just so happy with all of the sessions that you've been doing and all the things that you can talk about. And we were talking about Dolores before you ever even pressed record, and how much more have you heard her since you made that one video that
Well, yeah, I did
announced
a
it?
video late last year where
Yeah.
Dolores came through to me, and that's never happened with anyone I've never met in person before. But of course, she's come through sessions before and with a message and let me know she's one of my guides. She's come through you before with a message for me. And then, so this wasn't like, it wasn't a total surprise, but the clarity of how it came through. And I can describe it like this, like you're listening to Dolores Cannon's voice on a YouTube video, and then like you pause it and then you just kind of replay how clear it is in your mind what you just heard, and that's how it sounded like I was just replaying her voice back in my mind from a YouTube video, and I just started taking down what she was saying, and then even later I had done a recording. I wish I had just written it down because when I talked it felt like I kind of messed up the connection a little bit of what I was hearing, and I wish I would have just jotted it down because later when I was like transcribing it, she was correcting things that I had like messed up or whatever. So she's really particular.
Yes, she
so
is.
so like I thought she was gone, and I'm just writing it down, and she's like still there, like making sure this message gets out right. So it was a pleasure for her to come through to me like that.
I have a good story with that. I did something, and it's been more than a year now, and I've never released it. And I'm asking myself why, and there's some sort of reason I haven't. But I did this thing with my session with Dolores, which I've never released publicly. I've talked about it a lot. But I played that recording with some friends of mine, all online, and myself, and we all like relived my session together. Like they went into trance with like with me, and re-experienced my caveman life while Dolores was asking questions. It was sort of an experiment, you know?
Wow. That
But
is
here,
amazing.
yeah, oh yeah, there's a lot to talk about with that. And that may be why I'm holding off still. There's so much about it that's amazing. But this is the part I want to share with you that's so much fun. So I use AI transcription service called Otter, if you've ever heard of it. And I'll put often sessions in Otter, and it gets a lot of things wrong. No question about it. It gets a lot of things wrong, but I still find it valuable even without correcting it word for word, because I can find things, I can search for things, I can get gists of ideas and paragraphs. Listen to what happened, Shane. You know, I use this Otter. I've used it for many years. And when I put in, you know, my name is in there, and Otter can often recognize my voice, but I'll put in the first name and the last initial of the person who I'm doing a session with, client, right? And so it calls them speaker one when of course they don't know, you know, and you have to tag them. And then when I tag them, it comes up this really long list of stuff, right? I put that whole combined session into Otter to get a transcription of it. And when it came back, I had done many things with some of the other people, all on its own. I had never, ever transcribed anything Dolores had done using Otter. Her name showed up as the speaker.
What?
There's no
Wow.
way that it could decide that. And then here's the more interesting thing too. In the pre-session, when I was talking about what Dolores said, or afterwards when we were recapping what was going on, Otter would pick up what I was saying and attribute it to Dolores and give it to her. Do you follow me? I was speaking.
Right.
And it labeled it Dolores.
An Otter, right.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I know, and I'm just like, where did that even come from? How did that even happen? And it's not even even if you were to say, oh, you probably just forgot and it recognized her voice. Even if you said, I never put it in there that way. I mean, I always use first names and last names. Anyway, it's just interesting. Just Dolores, I think, truly has, she is not completely, you know, she still has a foot in this world.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I think that's probably been her life plan from the very, very beginning. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I never even answered your question because I talked about that. That actually comes to now. She hasn't actually given me direct messages like that one, but I've had a sneaking suspicion that when I have intuitive things that come to mind, like one time, like so much of the magic happens, especially you can see this happen in sessions. That's why I'm so happy that I've gotten into this. But the magic seems to happen in the randomness, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just have a thought, you know, like ask them what the first childhood memory that pops in their head is, right? It's like that's out of the, I didn't think of that. It just pops in my head, you know? And then I say that, and then that brings up this random thought in the client that means something. And I have a feeling a lot of times that's Dolores, even though she doesn't come through as Dolores, but I think she's helping me in a way to sort of help someone get deeper or get at an issue that they're having. Because then it turns out that, you know, a traumatic memory came up that they forgot about it. You know, it wasn't a traumatic event. It was just where they were treated a certain way and felt a certain way. And it had like lasting effects on it. So, but it wasn't traumatic, like, you know, abuse or something. It was just sort of a mental thing that they had kind of gotten themselves into and then forgot about, but it was still affecting them now. So a lot of times we carry so much baggage around that we have no idea about. And I don't know if this happens to you, but do you notice that you get a lot of people? It's almost like everyone that comes to me, I can relate with what's going on with them. It's like universe is sending me someone with a parallel issue so that I can see it from a different perspective and help myself. So for me, this whole thing, even though the sessions are great to have one, for me being a practitioner, I've learned so much. I've grown exponentially from
Yeah.
what it was before, you know, because like not only are you learning with your own issues, you're learning by helping others, and the intuition that comes through to have you help others, and whatever they get in their session turns around to benefit me as well. So it's like a dream job, you know. And I want to mention
It-
that, like, if anybody wants to get into this, I recommend getting into it, even if you just plan on having it like a tool that you use with your family, and maybe you don't want to, you know, start a business or whatever, but it's an excellent tool to learn. And I've got a link down in the description below with a discount. So for me, it was one of the smartest, best choices I made. And it even came up in my chart. You know, my astrology person, Lori
Really?
Lovian, said the asteroid Hypno came into my chart in 2017, just when Dolores came into my awareness and all of this stuff started to unfold.
Wow. Wow. I love that you brought up the things that you don't even know. You know, if we realized, especially adults, so if we realize what sometimes the smallest thing we do or say to a child, how long that can affect them. I
Hmm.
recently did a session with a woman who and she didn't even know this either. It came up in the session. So in BQH, you know, we have a few ways of talking about how to operate in a session. And one way is to look for the root cause, you know, looking for the root cause. And sometimes the root cause is not what you think, not what you think at all. And this woman had a lifetime of issues in relationships, and it stemmed from, are you ready for this? She was something like in first or second grade. There were children in the classroom. A child next to her was doing something tiny naughty thing, loud, gotten into something or whatever. And the teacher looked over and attributed this small misbehavior to the other child, to this, my client, the woman, and put her out in the hallway. And she had to sit out in the hallway. Her whole life was affected by this thing. It was 15 or 20 minutes, you know, in this whole scenario of this classroom and this teacher, but being wrongly accused as this little kid followed her whole life, affected every relationship she had at the end. Both of us were absolutely floored, but it changed something within her. And after that, everything was seen through that lens. So for BQH, going back to that, finding that, and then dealing with it at that point, sometimes then cleans up that timeline all the way forward. And it's like a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing that the smallest things, but when a child is, they're so impressionable, things matter so much to them, and that had to be awful being accused. I mean, that would be the equivalent of going to jail for something you didn't do as an
Right?
adult, right? So it's
Yeah.
like that had
Yeah.
to impact her, and it's like one of those things, like I was just mentioning, that you can just totally forget about, you know, until you get in the session, and then all of a sudden it's like obviously there and obviously causing issues, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about this one a lot, but I had another man, it's the same thing. He's like, I'm just so angry. I'm so angry all the time. I'm just so angry. And I've been going to psychotherapy. I remember this so well for 20 years, and it's never worked. And I keep trying, I keep working on my issues. Well, we go to the root cause. It's that easy in one afternoon. I mean, for this particular session anyway.
Right, right.
You know what the root cause was? I mean, and this gets just, it might be a little TMI, but it works out well. He actually was 4 years old, and he had to be circumcised at 4 because of physical issues, because he was not circumcised at birth for whatever reason. And he completely had forgotten about the whole thing all the way, but it was so traumatic at 4, and he was under the bed, and he was hiding under the bed in the hospital, and his mother and his doctor and the nurse, they were all pulling him out, you know, by his leg and all of
Oh my
that.
God.
And they were holding him down and then giving him anesthesia and all of that to calm him down and everything. And he felt so betrayed and so angry by his own mother that she was pulling him out. So what did we do in this session? It was absolutely brilliant. We basically said, you know, how can we resolve this? How can we neutralize it? And so we had, because BQH is so, you know, it's so imaginative and it's so creative and it's so flexible. So what we had was, we had the adult version of that man come underneath the bed to the 4-year-old, sit with him, put him in his lap, and tell him, you know, this is actually going to be fine, and it's going to fix something that's really hurting you right now. And I promise you, it's all. And they, so like the adult and the child fixed it under the bed, and he woke up and everything changed for him. He had no recollection of this.
That's amazing.
But,
I've
yeah.
seen this happen quite a bit where people go back, and in fact, I'll do it intuitively sometimes if someone has some childhood trauma, you know, but no one knows you like you. So it's the perfect person to go back and visit yourself and comfort yourself in that moment. And this is so powerful of a tool. I would have never, I could have never imagined it would be so powerful, but it is. And people come out feeling so much lighter from things like this. It's amazing the small things we carry around, right?
I know, I know. People say, I don't have any baggage. Oh yeah, you do. If you're a human, you have it. You really, really do. Shane, I'm noticing your hat, 1111.
Oh, yeah. I love that. This started for me with my mom. Her birthday was November 11th. So she passed away when I was 19, and I didn't know anything about synchronicity at the time, but I'd see 1111 on the clock, and I felt like she was saying hello. So it was only, probably 2017 that I realized like synchronicity was a thing, because I started seeing all these repeating numbers everywhere, and I'm like, what's going on, And it gets to a point where you just can't help but notice them everywhere. And so,
Right.
yeah, then I realized that's like one of the signs of waking up, that you start seeing these little signposts, like a little wink from universe. I had a rough day yesterday. I was like working on the sewer pipe all day long, and I was sitting
Oh,
wore out, and I was like, oh, what time is it even? And I clicked it, and it said 222. It's kind of like universe in that moment winking at me, like, it's okay. This
you're
is
all
just,
right.
yeah, it's all right. It's just one of
You
those
keep
things you got to
going.
deal with.
My brother died in 1989, and shortly before his death, he was showing me on his in digital clocks. 1989, there weren't that many digital clocks around. There were here and there, and he was talking to me, and he said, "Have you ever noticed that on the clock it says 11:11 on the clock, like all the time, like 1:11 or 11:11? And you're always looking at it, it's always 11:11." And see, at the time though, I didn't, right?
Right,
Because he was awake and I wasn't.
right,
And I felt the same way. When I would see 11:11, I thought it was him saying hello, until I got clued in to what
right.
that really, really was.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
had, but even the kids talk about other people noticing these synchronicities, like they'll be having a conversation and maybe TikTok's playing in the background, and it parrots what they're saying, or the
Yeah.
TV will, that's all these, they're like, freaking out, like, what are the chances? But it's happening more and more, and I think these synchronicities are just going to continue to increase until it's like overwhelmingly. I think this is kind of part of the singularity in what Dolores Cannon talked about, the split. It's like as things become more harmonized and the other frequencies fall away, I think we're going to see more of this in the zone moment. You know what I mean?
One time I was actually in a grocery store parking lot talking to Cynthia Sue Larson, and she was talking to me about what happened with that dried rose in her purse, and a lot of that, she was just telling me about this story before she had shared it, I guess, more publicly. And she said something along the line of, what are the chances, that this rose would just drop? And do you know, right as she said this, and it's winter and it's cold, I think, when she was talking to me about this, just at that time, a woman walked right in front of my car holding a dozen red roses, just like right in front of me. She says, what are the chances? And I'm like, well,
Don't you love that? I love the
it's so
compounding
joyful.
synchronicities like
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know how many
absolutely lifting.
I don't know how many times I've mentioned synchronicity or we're talking about, and then you look down at the clock because you're talking about it, and it's a synchronistic number on the clock, and it's like one of
Yeah.
those things. Actually, it would be 333 in New York right now.
There you go.
234.
Yes.
So yeah, we're
So
recording this on the 26th. It's actually going to be released later today, so it's fresh off the press for you guys.
fantastic. You get
Um,
right on it, don't you, Shane?
yeah, I try to. As long as I don't have to edit it, I can just post it right up there. So we
Sure.
should be good. I didn't have anything to show other than that flyer for the event. Speaking of which,
Yeah.
Dolores came into my awareness because when I first, beginning of 2017, the first half, I was looking around for Mandela Effect stuff, and she had a really popular video that was, it's the one where she's talking about the split happening in the new earth, and like some people over here would be like, oh, poor thing died thinking she was, this was gonna happen, and then on this side, it's like two different realities. And I think the Mandela effect really is, it seemed like it's come through sessions anyway, that this is sort of a byproduct. Some of it is sort of a byproduct of the split happening, and some of it's actually intelligent nods from the universe, sort of like a wink to wake
Yeah.
you up, gentle taps on
Yeah.
the aquarium glass, if you will, you know what I mean, of our
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
Have you had any stuff come through with the Mandela effect and its cause, or different
Oh
causes?
gosh, it's in sessions. Well, mostly it's timeline things.
Right.
It's understanding when it has been addressed. It's mostly the shifting and the shifting. And even Dolores said this, in her teachings, she would say, every decision you make, if you turn right or left when you go out of your driveway, if you're going to take this route to work or that route to work, if you're going to choose ham and cheese over, a cheese pizza for lunch, it doesn't matter what it is. Every single choice splits you off into a different reality.
Mhm.
And she made it, interesting to listen to, but it's really every single second in a way.
Yeah.
When, we make these pronouncements, we say things like, we're multidimensional and we're part of the infinite, life force of creativity and going out there. Well, multidimensional, infinite, well, that means there are all those choices, all those splits, all those different lines. And yes, it's hard for a human brain to sort of comprehend that. But I think what I love about the Mandela effect is because people are so, if you hadn't noticed before, please notice now how tribal humans are, in the last 4 years, right?
Totally. Yep.
If you didn't notice it before, it should be very evident right now. But one of the things I find absolutely fascinating about this is when you can talk about, especially some of the cultural ones. Did it this morning in my workout. I have a couple workout partners, and I had seen Cynthia Sue's post about Publishers Clearinghouse, and we talk a lot when we work out to distract ourselves,
Right.
keep us working out so we don't have to pay any attention. So we were bringing this up, and I said, do you remember Ed McMahon? Oh yeah. Do you remember him giving the check and Publishers Clearinghouse? Oh yeah, I remember all that. That doesn't actually exist in this timeline. And they're just like, they've listened to me say these things before, but they really just stopped. They were like, well, yes, it did. And like, look it up. Not where we are currently. It just doesn't. And I think what it is it's kind of almost it's a non-threatening way to kind of understand how much really is malleable and how much really does change. And by doing things like having a BQH session, sometimes it might just be ham and cheese or a cheese pizza, but sometimes having a session where you really intend to make some changes. I think that's one of the ways we're given an opportunity to think, yeah, things really can shift. They really can change. If those other things can change, so can some of these bigger things or things that might make my life better.
That's one of the reasons I'm so excited we're going to be there with Cynthia Sue Larson, because she's been after this for like 3 decades or more, talking about shifting your reality and jumping into a different timeline. And so much of this is about taking control and realizing how much our intentions really control where we're going. And I wanted to go back to Ed McMahon really fast, because those people might not have heard, but in this reality, that never happened anymore. Ed McMahon never
The
handed
big
out the big
check.
checks that we remember.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I had so many memories. I was like, do they really take that big check to the bank? Did they give them a smaller check?
Right.
Do they print up a new check every time or just stick their name on there? Does somebody in the car hold it for Ed? And they always come out with balloons. And I
Yeah.
remember having all of these kind of random thoughts about seeing this on TV. And yeah, and it's not real.
Now, this is probably one of the best Mandela effects for residue, because it's like none of the residue would have existed if the centerpiece, which is no longer there, didn't happen. So like there was this show where they were gonna like troll this whole family and make the person think that they won a whole bunch of money and they were just gonna spend it all on themselves. And they have Ed McMahon play the part of bringing out the big check. Why would they ever do that if he wasn't known for the guy that hands out the big check? And that happened like in, the 2000s. So it was well after, the 80s when we remember. Because I remember like watching, The Price is Right and things like that.
Sure.
That's back when I remember him doing it. It was like, I was only like 10, 12 years old at the time. You know what I mean? When I first started seeing him handing out the big checks. And I remember the envelope coming. So now he's not with Publishers Clearinghouse. He's with American Family Publishers. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? So yeah, this is definitely a different reality. And that's a really good example because he didn't even hand out the big checks with the company he really was with. So he never handed out the big checks except on TV shows where he was making fun of the fact that that's what he did in the 80s, right? It's like everything's pointing to the fact that he used to do it. It's almost like the kitchen table's gone and all the food and people are sitting around. Somebody's like, we used to have a table here, Strange.
Wow,
Very strange.
Shane, you want to define residue for my audience who might not know what residue is?
Right. So residue is things that support the idea of people's memories and the way they remember things being. So if, for instance, we'll just use this one as an example. He's handing out these big checks. That's sort of reminiscent of how he handed out the big check. So we call it residue of the other reality. It's like a little bit of the other reality remains, and you can get a little bit of that in all sorts of ways. Lyrics of songs, you might have the lyrics of the song change, but you'll come across a cover song where somebody's singing it and they'll sing it the way you remember it because they weren't reading the lyrics. So that kind of gets to the heart of what I think is happening. And I haven't had it proven wrong yet, so it's just sort of a mental thought for people to have when you see it happen. Is residue created by consciousness? I think we remember and we can carry something over into this reality from another reality, but it's consciousness that does that. So for instance, and I always use this because I saw a Febreze label that someone wrote out like on a big star with a Sharpie, and they wrote it in the original way. And I said, see how it didn't get changed because they knew what it was spelled like, they spelled it out, they put the price on there. Now, if they had gone into the computer and printed out a label, that label would have changed because it has nothing to do with consciousness. It has to do with what can be hacked, the reality, right? So I feel like when we see the thinker statue and you've got the thinker that's changed, but you got like 16 softball students or players, little kids all have their fists to their forehead. It's like nobody can see what the statue looks like. No, it's because it was human consciousness carried over, but the matter, or, if you will, the matter changed, but the people didn't,
Yeah. Hey, Shane, what do you think about, and I really wonder about some of these speakers, if any of them will, there's so many, I can't wait. I mean, so many of those names are new for me. And I'm wondering, what do you think about AI and people, because I think, we're being so fooled in some ways about some things. I'm almost a little concerned that the concept of AI will have people, or some people who might be on the edge of waking up, step back away from it and just say, nah, that just must be AI. What do you think about some of that?
I have definitely seen some muddying of the water since I realized the Mandela Effect was happening. So much stuff's going on now, so many fake videos of people with old phones showing that they can see the old way something was through the phone. And there's so much deep fake stuff going on that it seems like information just like across the board is just getting so murky. You know what I mean? It's like so much is just made up out of anything. And I think that's sort of why we have to go within. That's why BQH is so powerful, because you're getting your information through your heart, through your connection to source, not anywhere else. And I think the more we move forward, the more we're not going to be able to trust external sources. In fact, external sources, we've seen this in the last few years, right? You could have trusted an external source and it cost you your life in the last few years, right? So, and then there was the people that trusted their intuition. I know they're saying that, but I feel this and I'm going to go with that. And I say, moving forward, we have to learn to operate from the heart, not out of fear, but out of excitement and love and peace and things like that,
Yes.
you know. So it
Yeah.
seems like the external is pushing fear on us, and we can find that calm peace within and be guided by that rather than
Yeah.
sort of herded around by fear on the internet, right? It's almost like everyone's being herded by fear, you know?
It's so true. That's so true. You know, the use of the word expert, I was asked to be part of some sort of panel somewhere, and they kept using the word experts and experts, you know, we're getting the experts in the field. And I mean, I'm a little bit triggered by that word right now. I
Right.
don't want, I kind of eschew it. For me, it's like, please don't call me an expert. You know, I'm very happy to talk about how long I've done this and all of my adventures and everything, but I absolutely love getting together with people who are brand new at this. Because why? Their intention, their enthusiasm, their heart, their desire, they're waking up to what's going on and that they can help other people. It's so beautiful and it's so nourishing to me. I don't care that I've done this many, but you know, I think that's the old way of looking at a lot of things. It's like, don't talk to me about how much you know and how many of these things and how many years and how many clients you've ever had. Talk to me about what excites your heart, right? What really feels good. And those are the things that I find you know, exciting to focus upon in continuing to do this work. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people will be in the community and they'll learn a little and then they'll sort of branch off and do their own thing and focus only in on themselves. That's the human way a lot of times, and okay, that's fine. But I will never be one of those people because I see what we do through the eyes of the new people all the time, you know, and it keeps me humble and it keeps me in the place of remaining excited. And to this day, even after, gosh, coming up on 17 years of doing this exact kind of work and healing work, more than 20, I'm still so thrilled to talk about people or talk to people who are just now starting their first sessions or their first questions. And I think sometimes they think, oh, I must be bored with that. And it just couldn't be further from the truth, you know, it just couldn't, because watching them and ask the really great questions, you know, that help us all see this deeper and wider. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Absolutely. While we're talking about sessions, let's talk about expectations because I think a lot of people go into sessions feeling like it, and I think a lot of it's Hollywood, to be honest with you. You know, like you're
Yeah,
going to go into this place, you're going to
exactly.
be like in a trance, you're going to be gone, you're not going to remember anything of what's going on, and it's just not like that, you know. And I think people get an idea that everyone's a somnambulist when they go into a session, and that's really such a small. It's less than 1%, I would say, out of all the clients I've done. You just don't
Yeah.
come across an ambulance too often, just for
Less
people who
now
don't
than
know,
ever, I think.
let's
I think.
define that really fast. A somnambulist is someone who sort of clicks out. They go into this trance and they have no recollection of the session until after. And I think a lot of people think everyone has that sort of a session, but it's really not like that at all. For people, they're even more focused a lot of times than you would if in a normal conversation. So instead of being sleepy or sort of drifting into some other place, you become like so
Hyper
focused,
focused.
yeah, hyper
Hyper.
focused,
Yep.
and you're able to connect and see things so much clearer. It's like putting glasses on. So it's not like drifting off into somewhere else into a trance. It's actually like focusing in and just allowing things to flow through. And as practitioners, that's our job to help that flow because, you know, a lot of times we can get in our mind and we can control the images that pop in our mind by the things we think
Mhm.
about. So yeah, it's like surfing the waves or whatever. So that's what's cool though, is like everybody gets something out of a session. It's just how deep can you go and to acquire more information. But every level you get information, and it's just
Yep.
like the more you can move out of the way, and that's sort of the trick, you know.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why your relationship with your practitioner, how comfortable you are with them, is really everything. I've learned that in trading sessions with others throughout the years. And the more comfortable I am with whoever is right there with me, you know, the flow is it's much flowier, you know,
Yeah.
let's just say, you know, though, Shane, I have to be upfront about this. This everybody's a somnambulist. This comes straight from Dolores Cannon. She said it over and over and over again. I take my clients to the somnambulistic state of trance.
That's where
Well,
I
she
thought
did.
at first. Yeah, I thought.
Of course, we
Right.
all did. And she is the one who perpetuated this. And I think, sorry, Dolores, I know. I think it's one of the reasons I was one of her demonstration subjects, because I was absolutely there and I was absolutely there. I was both. I was observing what was going on and I was this caveman. And the very first thing Dolores said to me, of course, this is 2008, when I sat up, she was, well, how much do you remember? I'm like, I remember everything. And she actually tried to tamp that down for the classroom's benefit. She was like, oh, I don't think you remember as much as you say. And in my head, I'm thinking, I remember even more than what I said, and try me, test me. I mean, I was really cheeky, but I think I asked the kind of questions. I mean, look, she kept me around all those years, all the way till she passed. So I didn't upset her too much. Here's what I think, and how and why this ended up being this way. I think when Dolores was first doing this, when she was first experimenting in this, even in the 60s, remember, she was carrying around a tape recorder for her husband, who was the main hypnotist, reel to reel thing. She was carrying around a suitcase, to help record these things. I think more people were closer to somnambulistic state of trance. Why? I don't think humanity was as awake as they are now. So I think that was more. And I think Dolores was very, she streamlined things. She made things simple as she could, even though things were more complex in her own world. When she was presenting these ideas to people, she distilled them down to what she thought was the simplest, most easiest way to understand what was going on here. So people were comforted by that, I think, in part. And so I think it just perpetuated. And I love that you even brought this up, because one of the only surviving videos that Dolores and I did together was Expectations, Dolores Cannon on Expectations. And it's on my channel, and she speaks. We do this together. And it took me, Shane, I asked her for years to do this video, and she didn't want to do it. And she finally did. I said, Dolores, you're making it harder for us, because what people out there are concluding is that you know what you're doing and we don't. But you taught us, and we're doing exactly what you've told us. And the first few months of the support form, all the way back then, was us going, what are we doing wrong? Because not all of our clients are going to the somnambulistic state. Until we realized, that's happening to her too. She's not really talking about it, and she didn't really have to, and she had command of her audience. But it's a misnomer, and it's a misnomer now more than ever, because we can accept things like, yeah, I was on that planet, or I'm this little orb that's flying around over here in this other, reality. You couldn't have done that in the 60s and 70s without somebody thinking they were crazy or you were crazy, right?
That's a very good point. And I have noticed a lot of the people that have a good connection already, they never seem to be somnambulists. They seem to just have a clear connection and strengthen the connection they already have. So I don't know. I guess it is sort of a way to get us out of the way sometimes, and
Yeah.
when it needs to be. But the other thing that happens, you can see it with, the videos I put out, or maybe Alba Wyman. Well, she actually had a section on the training that was great, as far as we were talking about recording in person. And she's got this great section within the course, the VQH course, of showing you how to record in person. But yeah, I think, we put out the best of the best. We put out the ones that are going to have a good message that needs to be shared with the audience. Dolores wrote books from the somnambulist that she came across. She didn't write a book from every single person, and then the other books, it was like little, you would have different people that she had a session with, and different things that came through or whatever. But even that, we're going to see the best of the best. There's no reason to show someone that had a difficult time connecting or relaxing or whatever. So just by, what gets out there, you can feel like, oh, 100%, you're going to get something. You're going to, And it just might be something personal to you. It might not be something for the whole world. It might be you're shown something small that has sort of a butterfly effect. You know, we were talking about little things we've carried around that affect the way our choices we make and the way we, you know, just handle life in general. And those little things have to be dealt with a lot of times before you can move on to the other stuff. So every session is so completely different. And I'm so glad it's orchestrated from the higher realms. And I tell my clients, it's not like, I have no idea, just expect that, you know, your journey's being prepared on the higher realms, and you can have your questions, but you're going to get, you know, whatever you're needing at the specific moment. You know, just be open to whatever and like release the expectations. And you know what, it's like everybody gets what they need, and it's such a different session. Every single one is unique, even with the same client. You know, the same client can have
Absolutely
completely
true.
different sessions.
Absolutely true. You know, one of the things that I like to say about this expectation, because people are like, I'm still here, you know, like you were saying, you know, I'm still here. Yes, you are still here. I think a lot of people truly think that they're going to be like taken over, you know, like completely taken over.
Mhm.
And the reality is, if that were to happen to you, you'd be scared to death. It would be horrifying for you. It really, that is not a pleasant feeling. Not that I know what that is, but it's like, you really don't want that. And so one of the descriptions, so for you people out there who are getting ready to do a BQH or a QHHT session or anything like this, what you think about, like when your practitioner says, you know, let's talk to your higher self, you know, may I speak to your higher self, or asks questions of the spirit guides or the wisdom team, if you think about this, you have to lend your voice to them. So think of it that way. You're there, their energy is there, but if anybody wants to hear anything, excuse me, it's an interesting place for my throat to kind of
Right.
need to be cleared. If anybody needs to say anything, your voice has to be used. This is how we're communicating, doing some of this. Although, you know, like I said, I've had sessions where nothing was said. I've had sessions where the client says, you know, I can't say anything, but I'm seeing like a vignette of objects. I'm like, oh, well, tell me what the objects are. Well, there's a record player and a man with a pipe and all this stuff. And so we have this, you know, then we can decode that. So the information comes in a lot of different ways. And one, which was a couple of years ago, which I just thought was absolutely fascinating, was a woman who, now, of course, think about it this way. She was a dancer. This was a dancer who had a session. And she had this beautiful session. And when it came time to talk to her higher self, every single question was answered like this.
Wow.
with body movement. And you know, and I'm going, okay. And what I'm asking, and what was given assurance to me, was that the conscious mind of the client was receiving and understanding the communication that was happening, even though I'm just watching basically her dance.
That's
Just
amazing.
laying there. Yeah, yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways that information can be given to you.
Yeah, I've seen movement come through a lot, and movement can be, we don't realize this, but like on the you know, on a very low volume level, our muscles are making different frequency noises and things like that. I've had like different muscle twitches like in my toes, and I'm like, what's going on there? Why am I like inadvertently doing that or tensing up muscles or whatever? So I think sometimes you know, we're getting in that flow. It came through once that even my movement like this, sometimes when I'm getting in a meditative state, creates this
Yeah.
Doppler effect with your
Yes.
heart, and it allows you to get a clear signal through your heart, because the external signals
Yes.
begin to wobble, but your heart signal doesn't, right? And I'm like, oh,
Brilliant.
that's, but it happened intuitively, right? So it's like I always tell
Yeah.
people, trust it. If you feel like moving your hands while you're talking, just start doing that, you know?
Brilliant. So one of the reasons I'm in this house right now, this is my childhood home that we've turned into sort of my office space, my therapy space, but also this is where we hold the BQH immersion classes. But what I'm remembering right now is the last immersion class that we had, I was giving a presentation more and more about the understanding of water. You know, when we use this phrase a lot, flow a lot, and how water is part of this. But what I want to bring up is, you know, the that thin covering that's over all of our muscles. Shane, did you know that every fiber in your fascia is covered by a sleeve of water, and that there are theories that that is where many of our memories are actually held, is within our fascia and within those sleeves of water? Isn't that crazy? Because, and think about how often massage therapists will help clients release bottled up emotions and trauma.
Totally, yeah. It's amazing.
And just think about that. We don't know the beginning of our body, I don't think. I mean, we're learning more and more. But that one really struck me as incredible.
And it reminds me of how much, our intentions, they have the water, Dr. Emoto with the water crystals, and how our thoughts affect water. And there's the rice experiment where you can put hate on one thing of rice and love on the other one, and project love and hate at each one of them. And the hate rice will actually begin to rot quicker than the love rice. And then I was like, how many relationships are people in, and they go to bed every night thinking mean things about their spouse right next to them, like jacking up their water, and it's only going to make their relationship worse in the long run. You know what I mean? It's like, why can't you just send loving thoughts and create love? And it's like, we'll do that with complete strangers. We'll just have this random judgment about someone, just their appearance, and then we'll just send, bad vibes. So I think, it's like so important to look at everyone and just realize that they're all water, right? Because we're majority water. So our intentions and our thoughts do affect those around us, and we should be aware of that, And this is just another point you're saying, like we're completely, our memories and everything could be, they say water has memory. There's memory held in water. So
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. And actually, this plant is talking to me right now. It wants me to tell you a story. and one of the reasons is this idea of doing sessions online. So I did a session with this man a number of years ago now. And he's one of the very few, but there's been a couple of times where I got disconnected. The connection was disconnected. And we prepare for that. We prepare the client, we prepare the practitioner, and I just followed my own procedures, and I'm waiting for the reconnection. And it wasn't immediate. It was a couple minutes, and you're just really wondering what's going on for those couple of minutes. So the situation was, the man had taken his laptop to the office. It was a weekend. And he said, I have privacy here. There's too many people at my house. Nobody's at the office this weekend. I'm going to do my session in my office on my sofa. Well, he was too far away from the router. And there was some issue. And when it finally disconnected, because there had been some hanging up, he got himself up. He understood what was going on. He took his computer over to the central part of the office. He brought a cushion off of his sofa, and he just laid on the floor with his computer closer to the router. Where he laid on the floor happened to have like a plant like this, and like he's laying and the plant is over it. Do you know, first of all, the session was beautiful. It was absolutely interrupted. And then we asked her, and I always ask if and when there's interruptions, why was it interrupted? Do you know it was all about the plant? And it was all about how he wasn't connected, wasn't grounded enough. He didn't have enough water. He didn't have enough living things around him. He was always connected to this hardware and the electronics and stuff. And his incoherent energy was part of the reason that it kept dropping off the signal. And the plant was instrumental in keeping the connection going so we could do the session. And so much of it was about, get your ass outside. Just get outside and do some things outside and get your feet on the ground and do some things with green things. And the potted plant in the office ended up being a huge part of the session. Isn't that crazy? You couldn't make this up if you tried.
That's awesome. And that actually reminds me of, it seems like the worst possible situation would be to lose a connection with a somnambulist, but that's exactly how it happened one time for me. And I didn't even know the lady was a somnambulist because it was my first session with her, but it lost connection. I asked for a response and I didn't get one. And, then I looked and saw it at hung up. So I was about to call her back, and she calls me, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, I fell asleep." She had no idea. It's like they woke her up and had her call me
Yeah.
right away. And it's like once you realize like you're not alone, it's not you and the client, it's you and the client and all of your guides working together. So of course they can wake her up and pull her out of it. It's not like she's going to be stuck in this trance state for the rest of her life
Right.
or anything.
Right.
So yeah, the guides woke her up and she called me back and completely, and that was one of the two somnambulists I've worked with, so.
I had a woman once who, I've got this on my channel too. I actually have a video of this session. I don't post many of my videos, my sessions, but this one is on there. Speaking of movement, she's being healed like this. I mean, she's rocking, they are moving her, and she's like, I'm not doing this, they're doing it for me. I was like, well, what does it feel like? She said, it's like somebody is pushing right here on my arm. Do you know that you can actually see an indentation in her arm? Like you see this happening in the video?
Wow.
It's crazy. And then her jaw, they worked on her jaw like this. And this was one of those healing sessions, Shane, where it just went on and on and on and on and on. And this was still in the early days of BQH, just starting it, just starting doing it online. And anyway, she was having a lot of healing, and I was running up on a time crunch. I think my dad's caregiver or something was happening. I was gonna have to shut this down. I kept checking in, and their healing guides, the higher self said, no, she just needs more healing. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta go. I've never done this before, not in all these years, but I gotta go. And you know what they said? They said, oh, she'll be fine. Just leave her here. She's sitting here on the sofa like this. I'm like, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, she'll be fine. Then what will happen when you're done healing? She's gonna take a nap. Okay. Will she call me as soon as she wakes up? Oh, yes, we will have her call you as soon as she wakes up. And it was a good 2 hours later. But it was fantastic. And I have to say, being trained by Dolores, of course, and being, her greatest concern was the care of the client.
Mm-hmm.
Her greatest concern. That's where a lot of this don't do it online stuff came, because Dolores Cannon could not conceive of this yet.
Yeah, just so people know,
yes.
QHHT has to be done in person. You can't do it online. In fact, they'll kick you out of the board if you're.
Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And it's kind of crazy, because I used to ask Dolores, or people would ask, well, why not? What could go wrong? And really, the only thing she would ever say was, well, people, like, she would tell the story about this man who came off the cloud, like burning on a stake, or maybe he was being raped. I always get confused which one it is as a woman in that lifetime. And it was a demonstration subject that caused quite a ruckus at the hotel. But it wasn't dangerous. It just was noisy, right? I mean, we talked a lot about it, even in the classrooms. Well, what's the worst? Well, they'll just go to sleep, So, well, what do you really think's gonna, if they're on their sofa or in their bed, and they're just going to go to sleep, even if something awful were to happen, a fire, well, if you're asleep and the fire alarm goes off, you wake up. This isn't medication. This is just, consciousness. So I understand where that came from. And I have to tell you, it was a little disconcerting. I mean, hanging up, and I was very much looking forward to having her call me back. But she actually drove through town not terribly long after that, and we sat and talked about it, and then I showed clips of it, and that's what's on the YouTube channel. So yeah, that was my very first time. I've done it since then. I've done it 2 other times with the same sort of thing. The conscious mind knows that we're doing this. Yes, she really needs to stay in this state right now with this going on, and she's just going to go to sleep afterwards. So I think it's been about 3 different times I've done that now.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people look like they just came out of deep sleep. They go so
right?
deep. And it
Right,
takes them
right,
a little
yeah.
bit to get back into it. I think that's why, and I totally get Dolores thinking like you saying that you might not remember everything, because so many times, even in my session, listening back to it, I was like, oh my goodness, I forgot about this. It's not like you weren't there the first time. It's just that so much happens that you can forget little things and they don't pop up until somebody brings it up. Like Dolores could have said, well, do you remember blah, blah, blah? And you would have remembered everything. But without
Exactly.
being cued in on that, it might not have came into your awareness until re-listening to it again. But like for me, I was there for everything. It wasn't like I heard something that was a surprise to me. Like I didn't hear this, I don't remember this, but it was like, oh, I'd
Right,
forgotten this kind of, like I did remember it
exactly
at
it.
one point. So yeah, and I think
Yeah,
for most people it's like that. And you want to be there. You want to be aware of
sure.
what's going on, because and I got to tell you, the people that I know that are somnambulist don't like it. I wish they
No,
liked
they
it more.
don't. No, I know a lot of people think that's the only thing that can make it real, that that it's pure that way. And I'm telling you, those are the people who want to listen to their session the least. They're the ones who are weirded out by it. It's like, I mean, I hate to kind of bring this ugly part up, but it's almost like, if somebody slipped you a Rohypnol or something.
Right. Yeah.
You feel like you've been out of control and you don't like it. What did I say? What was, and people are so icky about that for the most part. Somnambulism isn't a worthy goal for most people, I don't think. And that's one reason, certainly,
It can
among
certainly be
others.
interesting, but and it's interesting when stuff comes through that the people don't agree with. So sometimes that can happen. So it's like,
Yeah.
of course they're not going to like it if
Yeah.
they're saying things they don't agree with or disagree with. So.
Yeah. So yeah, that reminds me of there's a great portion of sessions more in earlier days than now, but I've had a great number of sessions where people remembered absolutely everything about like the past life, the
Hmm.
experience part, and absolutely nothing about the subsequent talking to the higher self.
Oh
They
wow,
have,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
it's like their conscious mind was able to hear that, but none of that. And then some other ways that really shows up. Even I even show this in the BQH class in some of the webinars and some of the extra materials. But if you work with video or sound at all, you know what the sound waves look like, right? And when you're
Right.
quiet, you're like this, and when it's louder, it's like this. And if you take sessions and you put them in Audible or whatever, and you look at the audio file, very often you can see like this is the past life, and then this is the higher self. It typically is the one with the stronger signal, right? And I've even had clients who their accent changes. Have you had that yet?
No, I haven't. That's wild though. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I've definitely had a change in the intonation, like you're saying, like more
Yeah.
authority,
Yeah. Come from
louder.
here, right?
Yeah.
Here. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, two that really come to mind. One is a beautiful woman named Joy. Joy was actually Dolores's receptionist. She's since passed away. But Joy, we'd done a couple of sessions, and she would have her regular voice in the past life part of the session. And when her higher self would come through, she sounded Irish.
Oh wow. I've
And
seen
she was
channelers
a
do that, but yeah,
She
not in the
was a
session.
southern, yeah, she was a southern girl, kind of Louisiana, southern guy. She had kind of a southern drawl, and all of a sudden she'd be talking Irish, when she was her higher self. And a fantastic session I had with a man who was from New Jersey. He flew in to see me. This is when I was still doing QHHT. And I lived in New Jersey for a little while, and when he walked in and he had that Jersey accent, and it was so strong. It was so strong. I mean, I'm gonna walk the dog to see the coffee, I mean that real Jersey accent. But I'm used to that. I was used to that because I lived there for a while. And during his whole past life, he talked like that. And when he got to his higher self, perfect Oxford English, not a hint of an accent.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was actually astonishing.
That is crazy. I wanted to talk about before we go. I'm saying we're a little over an hour. I wanted to talk about the solar flash because This comes up a lot in different sessions that I watch online. I think the first time I
Yeah.
heard it was an Allison Coe video back when I was first getting into this, and then it's come through that, and it relates to the Mandela effect. That's why I want to talk to you about the white
Oh,
sun. Okay, so
yeah.
with the sessions and the different things I've been able to come up with, the solar flash is happening right now. It's just
Yeah.
drawn out in a way that makes it feel like it's not happening. And we're kind of expecting like somebody took a picture and there's a flash, right? But if you look at the last, I think Dolores said it, the speeding up started around like 2003 or 2004. So that speeding up is actually what's creating the brighter sun as well. And if you were to able to like see from 2004 until now in a time lapse, you would see the sun is flashing. And it's going to continue to flash and get brighter and brighter. So it's like we're in the middle of the flash. So people
I
that are like,
love that.
it's not happening, it's like, or it didn't happen, or when is it going to happen? It's like, it's happening right now. It's like on the cosmic scale, it's just drawn out so much that some people notice the sun's brighter, right? They don't
Yeah.
realize it's the flash. They're just like, is the sun a different color? I remember it being yellow. Why is it so white? You know what I mean? And it's like,
Oh God, I love that so much. That's just perfect. And it's because, you don't have like you don't have a monitor on your brain, although we've done that a little bit too, but to see where you are and the information that's coming out. So some of the higher level information that's coming out, if you are lending your voice to, these other beings, these other that have a different kind of perspective, a different kind of timeline thing going on, from their perspective, especially because of the no time, right? It is a flash.
right.
Right? It is a flash, and they do talk about it as this event, like just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And then we bring it down to this slowing it back down thing, and we're like, yeah, where is that? Ooh, and you know what that reminds me of too? There's this man who came to visit, and he had had a lot of ET experiences and a lot of very strange physical things happening. And one of the experiences that he had that I can relate to because of something that happened to me once, where I noticed that the life forms around me were like in slow motion like that. And I felt like this, right? So if you think about that, because he was like taken up in a craft and then put back down all when he was in the bar scene. So imagine this, he's not even in bed or anything. He is sitting in a bar, it's in a pub in the UK, and he's like in one of those circular booths, and he's smack in the middle with people on both sides of him, and it's a raucous, very loud things going on, and he's in the middle, and they take him up into a craft, right? Right before they do, he notices everybody slows down, and they take him up into a craft, do the things that they're doing, which is, I'm not going to go into that here, but they put him back in this bar, but guess where they put him back? They put him back just outside of the table. So he's standing by the table, and everybody is still in slow motion. And then all of a sudden they go back and they're animated. So from those people's perspective,
He teleported.
he blinks from this spot to this spot. So it's a time thing,
Yeah.
as far as.
Now, did they notice it?
Oh,
Did it?
yeah, they noticed it.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay.
they noticed.
Right. Well, I was wondering because you see with Mandela effect, you might
Yeah.
notice that the nickel that I don't know. But I had somebody the other day watch my nickel video from like 7 years ago, and they're like, my nickel just changed. But back then, I was like saying there's no way we've had this nickel for 10 years, but now it's been like 17 years, and it just popped up in his reality. So you can really see how the reality is
Yeah.
very subjective. There's not really, as much as we wish there was an objective reality we could all agree on, our experiences all vary so much. So I wouldn't have been surprised if no one noticed that he moved. It would have been like a Mandela effect where he was just always standing there to those people. You know what I mean?
It
You just
might have
never
been.
know.
It
Yeah.
might have been. He had another experience where they took him up out of his friend's house. He was staying at his friend's house, and he was upstairs in this flat, and they took him out of his bed and they put him back, but they put him back in the friend's younger sister's bedroom wearing her clothes. And his clothes were nowhere to be found. And he had on these tight little non-fitting, ill-fitting girl clothes. And he wakes up in the middle of the night thinking he's going to be murdered by this friend's father, because he can't explain what's going on here.
Oh,
I mean, the whole thing is a little nutty like that. But I love that about the sun. It makes me wonder, I used to work at a weather station, and I have been itching to ask my old boss about the color of the sun. But it brings up this point about the Mandela effect that I know that you know about, and that is sometimes when the people who are too close to it, when they are right in it, they don't experience the Mandela effect. So I wonder if my friend Mike Smith never noticed that the sun was, more yellow, even though weather's been his life from the beginning. Sort of like doctors don't recognize
the heart
some of
movement
the
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cynthia Sue Larson calls that the quantum Zeno effect. And it's like, it's sort of like you're locked into this reality because you're too involved with it. So if you're always flying a plane, then of course geography probably won't seem like it's changed. Or maybe if you're a brain surgeon, you might notice the heart's changed or something like that. If you're like always working on the brain and never looking at the heart, you might be like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
definitely moved
Well, but
over.
about like is that whole idea of a kidney punch, right? We
Right.
still call it a kidney punch.
Right, but they've moved. Yeah, they're up under the ribs now. For you guys that don't know, they're no longer exposed. They've been moved up under the rib cage, which some people say the rib cage has even gotten a lot larger.
Right, and the floating rib is gone, or
Yeah.
what? I don't remember that one.
See, we always gotta check, because when I found out about the
Right.
Rainbow Mountains, I was so excited about them, and then like a month later, and there was only one location in China where the Rainbow Mountains were. It was like 3 weeks or a month later, I'm going to show somebody it, and they're like in 4 locations, 3 more locations. So I was like, what the heck? I just looked at this. It's like there are Rainbow Mountains popping up everywhere. They're in China, South America, Central America, I think was another one. But it was like, it's like our new world is coming into reality and no one
Yeah.
notices. And I think that might be how it is. One day it's like,
I think so.
we'll say, don't you remember, the elite and all? And they're like, who are you talking about? The elite? Who's that? They've always been gone. There's never been an
Yay!
elite. So I'm expecting shifts like that, Mandela effect sort of shifts that make it seamless. But for those who are awake and aware, you'll just notice that the sun's brighter or there's Rainbow Mountains now,
Fantastic. I'm waiting for the giants to always have been around.
The giants.
The actual giants, like, skulls this big kind of
Right.
things. Yeah, I listened to an archaeologist give a talk a number of years ago. She was this promising archaeologist who worked with a very famous, I'm not going to remember what his name was. And she had made a discovery that it was absolutely clear that there was like these huge humanoid bones that they were, that they had come across. And the whole thing was then, hushed up and put away. And she would not participate in the cover up. So of course she was canceled. And I heard her on a random radio show. I am sorry that I don't remember her name, because I wish I would have somehow written it down or committed it to memory, because I wonder what's going on with her now.
I've heard that story before. I can't think of her name either. And even the guy's name, I can't. The Garden of the Gods, or
yeah, oh maybe.
author
And
of-
I think that like under the Vatican, I think those bones are down there for anybody who has access to get down there to go see, actually.
It's such a shame too to see science get turned into like a religion, basically. When like
Yes,
that's the
imagine
heart
that.
of being. It's like you're an explorer of the sciences. So
Yeah.
when you find something new, that's like the treasure you've been searching your whole life for.
Right.
And then for somebody to be like, shut up, that doesn't fit. That's what do they call it? They call it anomalous artifacts. If it doesn't
Oh,
fit
God.
the narrative, they throw it in this
Yeah.
closet labeled anomalous artifacts. And that represents things that don't fit the narrative. And that room is full of all sorts of cool stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, spontaneous remission. It's another closet, isn't it? It's probably what I'm going to be talking about a lot at the conference. Hey, let's remind everyone when that is, right? Because
Yeah,
because
let
we
me.
want you people to show up. If you are interested in this stuff, if you are a quantum healing practitioner of any kind, or just interested in some cool things, or in starting an absolute wonderful new timeline with some new friends, come join us. This. It's going to be amazing. You know, I was so happy to hug you, Shane, when you were on your way to a SETI a few years ago. You were on your way and we had pizza.
Yep,
Remember that? I loved
yep.
it so much. And I couldn't go, but I get to hug Cynthia and my new friends. And I actually knew Pippa from social media, and I didn't know she was a speaker till you shared this
Isn't that
graphic.
awesome? Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody's so awesome, and it's going to be such a fun time. So yeah, it's this coming November, November 7th through the 10th in Nashville, Tennessee. And what's cool is, if you the place, the venue for the event is actually at the hotel we're staying at. So there's going to be a lot of cool hangout time afterwards. There's a lot of places to sit with couches and stuff in the hallway.
Great.
So just like hanging out in between and everything, that's some of my favorite part, is just meeting people,
Sure.
hearing everyone's stories and everything. So, and then of course going out late at night, I'm going to be checking out the stars, because I know a lot of us look for our star family at night. So
Yeah. Oh,
so,
I
so
love
many
it.
fun parts of this. But yeah, you guys just check out imec.world. I'll leave a link below to take you directly to buying a ticket and come hang out with us. Be awesome.
Yep, I already know people who bought tickets. I have, besides all the people I mentioned before, I have a couple of clients who I know at least are showing up because they're like, oh, you after our session. And so they're showing up. So it's going to be not a real reunion for
Right?
quantum healers, but let's call it a reunion adjacent.
That
So
sounds perfect. And it's in such a
yeah,
great location to drive
it
for
is.
so many people to be able to drive. Like Tennessee touches probably more states than any state, I think. It's like
Yep, we're
so big.
driving. I'm not getting on a plane.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely driving. Our daughter might be in a little more than a year. She's in Japan right now, but one of the places she might be moving to is Memphis, Tennessee. So
Wow.
this feels pretentious like that, or pretending that maybe that will show up in our reality. So
So yeah, it's a 9 hour drive for me. Have you figured out how long it is for you guys?
yeah,
12,
yeah,
probably more
but we're gonna
12,
be
13.
stop. We're gonna yeah, we're a little more than that, but we're gonna stop in Springfield and pick up the other two people and kind of break it up at that point. It won't be quite halfway, but I think we'll have about another 6 hours to go or something after we stop in Springfield.
Oh,
So
wow. So Springfield's past halfway, huh? Or is it almost right
well,
around the halfway point?
and no, it's not quite. I think it's closer. So yeah, it'll be a
Oh, okay.
short day the first one, but there'll be more drivers the second one. So I'm gonna call it good.
Well, I was born and raised in St. Louis, and Springfield is sort of that halfway point from Tulsa to St. Louis. So,
Right, right.
so it's
Yeah,
funny.
Tom goes to St. Louis quite a bit, and yeah, Springfield halfway that way.
Wow,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, looking forward to seeing you there, Candace. Thanks for
Me
coming on.
too. Oh gosh, it was so great to catch up with you again. It's been a few strange years with a lot of weird kind of energy, and it almost feels like maybe we're coming back to a more exciting, more positive collective place. What do you think?
I definitely agree. You know, that my guide showed me, it was a lot like one of those cymatic plates where they pour the sand on there, and the vibration changes the sand particles into different patterns, as the frequency changes.
Yeah.
And they were showing me how, like, some sand has to move quite a bit to move into the new frequency pattern. Some grains of sand are kind of going to stay where they're at. Some are going to bounce off the plate. You know what I mean? So it's like, just understand it's just
Yeah.
part of how the movement goes, and life will get shaken up for those who need it to be shaken up a little bit, and it's all part of the process, though. So it can feel very intense and chaotic, especially if you're sort of waking up. I feel sorry for people that are sort of like getting bombarded with everything right now, because it seems like that's
It's a
how it is.
lot.
It's like a crash course on the truth about everything, and it can be
It's a
really
lot.
daunting, but that is only a stepping stone to moving, like, out of realizing you're a victim to realizing you're even more than that. So but you have
Yeah.
to go through that that period where everything seems so bleak or whatever. So I'm always there to try to encourage people to get over that hump and to realize that you can step out of the role of being the victim and move into being empowered to do whatever you're here to do. And that's why I
Yeah.
love so much about the BQH sessions, because it connects people with their true mission and purpose in life.
And connecting with people at this conference is another way, knowing that there are people out there with the same mindset, the same positive feeling, the same feeling powerful about creating a better world. That's one of the best things that's going to come out of this conference. I can't wait.
Yeah, and we're like water, we're like crystals. So when we get together like that, it's a synergistic effect. That's like the energy of all of us together is more than sort of like, you know,
Yes.
Christ saying, when you guys gather, there I am as well, which is a Mandela effect. But I don't know if you knew about that
Perfect.
one, the 2 or 3. And now it
Or
says when,
gathered in my name, when any 2 or more are gathered in my name. You're not telling me that one's changed.
yeah, it's not 2,
changed.
it's not 2 or more anymore. It's 2 or 3. If that's 4, too many people. Check it out. That's a crazy one. There's so many Mandela effects. I'm so happy that we're going to get together and be able to talk about all these and blow each other's mind, because there's always ones we didn't hear about, you know?
You know what the first thing that comes to my mind is this is probably where they got the 6-foot separation, social distancing too. Don't be gathering any more than 2 or 3. Oh my God.
Yeah, that does fit that, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh. Oh God. Okay. All right. That's enough excitement for one day. Thank you, Shane. Always so great to be with you and speak.
Perfect. Thank you guys for being here and listening to Candace and I, and thank you for being here, Candace. Looking forward to seeing anybody that can come join us in November. It's going to be awesome. And with that, we will leave you guys. Links are in the description to Candace's channel, and to, if you're interested in taking BQH, the tickets to the
Join
conference.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, everything will be down there.
All right. Thanks
Lots-
so much, Shane.
Thank you. Lots of love, light, and unity to each and every one of you. Peace.
Mm-hmm.